How you doing, guys? Today I am going to hopefully have this engine ready to start. Got about 2 or 3 things that need to be done before we can go ahead and say that it's ready to have fuel and oil. You can see I installed the gas tank. I loosely affixed it with the bands here. I may have to make some adjustments in order for it to fit under the hood, but for this particular purpose of just getting it started, it is installed. I have a brand new sediment bowl that I bought. I really hate these things, but for this application, it's what's needed. The original fuel line, which needs to be replaced, is right here. It had flared fittings on it. It's all kind of crusty, rusty, and it's just doesn't look good. So I am going to swap it. I am going to make a new fuel line using this copper, but I am converting it to a compression style fittings. I've done this in the past with success on the little mule right here. You can see I do have a compression fitting and a copper fuel line that goes up and around, down and up, and then into the carburetor right there. And that's using an electric fuel pump. This is going to be gravity fed from the tank to the carburetor, so that should be sufficient. I'll show you how I do that with this copper pipe in a few seconds. Next, the magneto. Got to set up the magneto with new points, condensers, kilowire, blah, 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 blah. And then we got to get it timed and installed. I do have to make a new ignition wire that comes up, hits the new spark plug, but that should be fine. Before I put the flywheel and the rope start pulley on the motor, I am going to bring the tractor frame into the garage and mount this engine on the tractor. I did run to the hardware store and get some new bolts. And then we'll get the air filter tube on and all that stuff. We got to get that on because I got to get a nut up here, and the only way to do it is without the flywheel. So few things that we need to do in order to be ready. I do have a new fuel cap too. I'll go get that. We do have a couple things that we need to have done in order to get this thing ready for its initial firing. So let me go ahead, let me get the pipe ready, and I'll show you how I make fuel lines. First off, I had to go ahead and make myself a little tubing bender. This is an RJ58-59 engine pulley. It has a nice radius to it, plus the 1/4-inch pipe fits in it real nice. Just took a pair of vice grips, clamped in a piece of band iron so that way I can shove the pipe down here, and then I can just use my MAP gas torch just to warm up the copper and make a nice clean 90-degree bend. Now if I kink it a little bit, I can always take it and tap it with a hammer and just take that kink out of the pipe. I'm going to start from this side, work across, work back, work up to the carburetor. That's just going to be the easiest way. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, there's going to be a huge piece from here to where the bend is, a lot longer than I need, but I can go ahead and trim that off to make it fit. At the end of the day, the 90-degree bend I have to feed it through this way, okay, to the sediment bowl. So I'm going to have to do a little tomfoolery to get it through that little space there in order to get the fuel line. Ultimately, the goal is to have the fuel line run right through that, like right at the bend, because that's the largest spot. We'll see how it goes. We're going to try to nail it, and you know, if something happens, we'll just cut it off and start over. Hopefully we don't have to do it too many times, because I don't have a whole lot of copper left, and that stuff is expensive. Okay, initial slide in is fine. As you can see, that looks pretty good. I don't have it tightened down or nothing. I think I pretty much nailed. It's leaning down, so if it was picked up it would be pretty much nailed. I think one of the things I'm going to do is the piece that's coming down, I am like maybe right where this is right here, I'm going to tweak it just a little bit just to kick the pipe over so it'll come down straight, little kick over, 90 degrees through the blower cover. So I'm going to go ahead, get that done, and then I'm going to loosely affix it so that way I can figure out where I want my next 90-degree bend to go towards the back of the carburetor. So you can see how I make the bends. If we take a look, I did make that little tweak. It's hard to tell with the glass bowl there, but I did make them little tweak. The fuel line goes through real nice. I made that 90-degree bend, which is right there, clears everything real nice. It's going to go behind the carburetor. And the next 90-degree bend I have to make is somewhere over here. So like the bend actually has to be started right there, so that way I can get this, this end of the pipe up to this fitting. But overall, if we just take a look, I mean, that's going to be fine. All right, so I'm going to go, just as you saw me make this bend, I'm going to make the bend in the back. I'm going to line it up, trim it down, and I'll show you how we're going to finish the, metal finish the pipe itself. So here's the pipe all bent and cut to length. And when I indicated that I do some metal finishing, this is what I mean. When you use a little pipe cutter like this, you get like a rolled burr inside the pipe, which, obviously constricts fuel flow. And with this being a gravity feed and not with a fuel pump, you want to get rid of that burr. So I just take a small rat tail file, clean it all up, make sure that the pipe is nice and clean. I'll blow it out with air a whole bunch of times, brake cleaner, make sure there's no like little shavings or anything in there that could go into the engine. The other thing I'm going to do is wherever there's like a little dimple or a little divot, maybe from the hammer, or I sometimes will even use the press very lightly to straighten things out. I'll just take a fine flat file and just file it off, or maybe even this rat tail, just to smooth out maybe somewhere the bends are. And then I'll get a brand new piece of Scotch-Brite and I'll just Scotch-Brite the whole pipe down, gets rid of all like the burn marks and the tarnishing. And then I'll go ahead and get the compression fittings, and put it all loosely affixed on the engine so you can see what it looks like. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. The one thing that's interesting is it is way shorter than the original. I don't know what beats me, but anyways, it fits real nice. It's tucked in real good. I think it's going to work out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead, file that out, finish it off, put it on the engine, and give you a shot of what it looks like. Okay, it's just snugged in. I didn't tighten down any of the compression fittings yet, but you can see that flows real nice. If I turn the engine around, you can see it comes right out. Comes right across. I think that looks pretty good. The only thing I wish this wasn't slanted down. I wish it was a little straighter, but in general, I am going to leave it just the way it is. I think that came out mint. All right, next up, I'm going to actually take the carburetor off, get the fuel line out of the way, and let's get the magneto back together. I have all the new parts for the mag. New cover gasket, condenser, points, a new brush. 4 new screws came in the kit for the cover itself. There's a little bit of lubricant for the brush. There is a new kill switch, or kill tab, I guess you'd call it, but I am going to use the original one off of the other magneto. The other thing I'm going to do is I really want to use this cover because it's not a replacement cover. It's the original Fairbank Morris cover off of one of the other magnetos. Unfortunately, it was cracked. I showed that in an earlier video. I just took my Dremel with a burr, plowed out a trench right on the crack itself. It starts right at this meaty point and comes all the way up. It's cracked. Where can you see the crack is right at my fingernail right there. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this in with all JB Weld. Now, it's immaterial because it goes like right in this area or right in this area, whichever one it is, sorry. Actually, this side, there's nothing there. So as long as we don't have any JB Weld above this surface, we're going to be perfectly fine. So I'm going to go ahead and mix it up, shove it all down inside that crack. I sanded it down, and I'm going to make it, you know, I'll make it look semi-pretty, but not like perfectly mint. And that should save it, and it should be fine. As long as I don't torque the bolts down to 600 foot-pounds, we should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and then we'll start working on putting the magneto physically back together. With the cover curing in the sun, I went ahead, made sure this cover plate was super clean, made sure the inside of everything was real clean. Now, according to the manual, you're not supposed to lubricate this bushing, but I did put just the smallest little tit of bearing grease in there and put it together, enough where it didn't even ooze out. Spins really nice. Next up is to put the kill tab in, because the wire, the kill tab goes right here, and the wire has to snake through in that kind of position. So I got to put it in before we put the points in. Essentially, what it is there's a screw that runs through the housing itself. I went to my little parts bin and I got myself a new screw, one that's kind of much cleaner. And it's pretty simple. It's a washer, then there's a fiber protector so it doesn't ground out to the housing. There's a fiber bushing, which is right there. That goes in the hole, which the screw passes through, therefore not allowing the screw to ground to the housing itself. Then there's another fiber washer, okay? And then there's a brass washer. Then it goes the kill tab. And what that's for, I think actually there might be a nut there too, just to space this out. So basically this thing is all, it's going to be all insulated. So the only time it actually makes contact, it grounds, is when it makes contact. And then there's another nut and some other little various things to keep it from grounding out. So just layering it all together. It's pretty simple. You know, wherever you think the screw is going to touch the housing, that's where you put a fiber washer. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, get the wire in, tighten it all down, and then we'll see if and then I'll check for continuity on the kill tab. Coil's in. Basically, it just slides in, and there's two set screws on the top that pinch it to the laminate bars on either side. I did test it to make sure that it still had continuity. It, in theory, should work. We got the brand new points here. They bolt into two screws. There's a screw right here, a screw right there. This part of the point goes on this little rod, which there is a little washer and a spring clip that holds it in place. This little guy, which is like the wiper, or the little felt wiper that rides on the points actuator arm, it bolts right here with it, and in the kit that I got did have a new one, so I'm going to swap that out. This is the new condenser bolts right there. The wire comes around, all three wires go to the bottom of the points. According to this little baggie that came with the kit, it says gap to 15 thousandths, and if I remember correctly, that's exactly what the manual says. So I'm going to go and I'll check the manual, make sure it is 15 thousandths. But essentially, I'm just going to go ahead and bolt all this stuff loosely back together. An hour and a half, 2 hours later, it's finally done. What a nightmare this thing was. And partly because this housing has the kill in the back. This coil came out of this housing, okay, which has the kill switch in the front. And the reason that this is here, or that this coil was in this housing, is it goes too far back. This is the coil from this housing. It's actually bigger than this, whatever this is. I have no idea what that is, but this is the coil that was in this housing. So what I ended up having to do is take a file and file the back of the epoxy down very carefully, because of course, you know, you can't blow through the epoxy, until this one would fit in the housing with that kill tab. As you can see, the set screw is in the divot, and when I say the divot, I'm talking about that thing right there. There's a divot right there, and there's a divot right there. You can't really see it, but both the locking set screws are in the divots. The kill wire works. The kill switch works. The coil still makes, you know, still has continuity, so it's fine. I have the new condenser in. All 3 wires are hooked up at the most open spot. According to the manual and to the bag, it's 15 thousandths. And if I gently slide this in, whoops, there you go. Just a little bit of drag. That's 15 thousandths. So, in my opinion, this thing is done. What a nightmare. Not a fan of this. This is stupid. Just give me a good flywheel with magnets. That's all I need. I did JB up this thing. I'm waiting for it to finish up. I'm going to wash it, polish it all up, and put it back on. I am having a little bit of a problem with this tab. This peg seems to be sticking out further. I'll have to check the other cap. Well, actually, I have one right here. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, see that one there, the actual tab is behind the face of the cap. And this one, there it is. It's got to be about the same. I don't know. It just really puts a lot of pressure on this tab, which bends it. So, I don't know. Any event, this needs to be, I got to just wait for this to harden up overnight. Tonight I'll wash and polish this up. Got the new gasket. It's right over there. I'll put the cap on, and then we'll time it and mount it on the engine. I'm ready to go ahead and install the magneto onto the engine. The engine is set to top dead center, okay? We do have a bolt, which is right here. It passes through the block, okay? And obviously the upper bolt of the magneto goes there. There's a stud on the lower section because it is blind. It doesn't go all the way through. I got a couple nuts, a couple lock washers to lock everything down. One of the main things is this X, I just took a piece of sandpaper and sanded the tooth very lightly just so I'd clean it up. You see this X? We got to have that X show through this window right here. So it's set up where it would fire. We've got to slide it in and have that X right in the middle of the window. And then we can go ahead and tighten it down. There is a gasket, so I'm going to go to the gasket kit, pull out the gasket, put the gasket in. I am going to take a little bit of Durco sealer, put it on this washer, so that way when it tightens up, it seals the bolt from the block, and it'll squish out. I'll let it cure overnight, and then I'll just take my razor knife and take off the excess, just like I do with all of the other bolts that I've sealed up. All right, so let's get this thing all in there, lined up, timed, and ready to go. And she's mounted. Everything's nice and tight. Everything looks really clean. Again, all that Permatex or the Durco sealer that's squeezed out, that's not a big deal. Just let that fully cure and it will be, I'll trim it off, it'll be absolutely fine. Taking a look inside the inspection window, let's see if we get a light in there. There it is. There is the X on the tooth. So I would say that is timed and ready to go. We are at top dead center. The woodruff key is pointing directly at 12 o'clock. All right, that's it. Next up, I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go get the tractor and put this thing on the tractor because it's getting to a point where it's getting a little too heavy to pick up or get off the workbench. So I'm going to go ahead and get that in here, put that on. I'm going to put the plug in because that's all set, and then we can put the carburetor, exhaust, venting, flywheel, everything, and we'll be just about there. I brought the tractor frame in, mounted the engine to the frame, which is huge. It just feels really weird. I haven't haven't seen this engine on this tractor for, God knows, 3-4 years. But it's on, it's mounted for the initial startup. We're getting right there. Went ahead and installed the governor. I did set the spring to like one of the lowest settings, so we'll take a look at that later. I went ahead and set the governor. Basically, you put the throttle to full throttle, okay? And you take the governor arm here and you push it all the way forward. And then you screw this rod in and out until the end just drops naturally in the hole, which it does. So I got, this is full throttle, and then the little arm just goes ahead and drops right in. So I just got to get a little cotter pin to put that on. Mounted the carburetor. Fuel line, as you can see, it runs real nice. Goes right down, comes right across. Looks like we got good spacing right there, up to the sediment bowl. So that's all tight, so hopefully it shouldn't leak. Here's the carburetor all hooked up and torqued into place. I did add a little spring from my Clinton parts bin. So the little spring that's in, or the smaller diameter spring, that's the original Wisconsin spring. I added this Clinton spring to the outside of it, so basically slipped the Wisconsin spring in and clipped them on, and it just gives it a little bit more, positivity to the choke. So that should be all set and ready to go. Cleaned up the cap. I indicated that I would JB weld the inside of the cover because there is a crack there. The rest of the cover is neat, and I think it just looks the part better. But I do have to make a new ignition wire. I'll be doing that right now. We got to put the breather tube in place. We got to put the intake on the carburetor. That'll be done in just a few minutes. I do have the pieces for the exhaust system. We'll be putting that on. And then eventually I'll be setting up a temporary throttle. I'll probably just vice grip it or spring clamp it here. So that way I can keep things moving. I can adjust the throttle hopefully once the engine starts. All right, let me get to those last tidbits. And I am going to put the bell housing on the back because I got to plug up these holes because they're not blind. They go all the way through the block, so we don't want oil coming out. So we'll do that right now. For the ignition wire, it's going to be pretty simple. This is the original piece that went down inside the cover. This is what makes the contact from the wire to the cover. Originally, I'm just reusing it from another ignition wire. Just going to unsolder or just add a little flavor of solder to the end. Strip off a little bit of this, have the core wire come through this, oops, where the heck is it? This little hole here, and then I'm just gonna hopefully I'll tin it, and then that should solder together. Get my length. This is an end that I had downstairs that's brand new. It's just gonna go ahead and be a clipper style onto it, but I will shove it into this boot, so at least the spark plug will have a nice boot cap to it. And then I'll probably just run it, I don't know, XYZ wise. All right, so that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make that, run it, cut it, and then we'll get this thing done. The ignition wire and a couple other items have been installed. The ignition wire starts here, comes underneath, comes up around here to the spark plug. Now I did that for two reasons. Number one, keep it away from the exhaust, which will be installed shortly. And the second thing is, this is being a 1955, it has a push button kill switch on the hood. So I need to run a wire from the kill tab area to the hood. So I'm gonna run it, I'm gonna snake the kill wire up. We're gonna hit the ignition wire, and then I'm gonna use a couple wire ties. I'm gonna use the ignition wire up in this area. I think I'll use this to help me aim it, so that way there's no wires hanging down and around the engine itself. Installed the breather tube, which of course required me to take the dang governor arm off. I must have taken this governor on and off about 6 times, but hopefully we won't have to take that off again. but the breather tube is in place. The brass fittings are in the intake itself. Intake bracket is bolted to the hood, to the blower cover. There's a little nut in the inside. One of the things that's kind of neat about this is it has this pinch bolt that pinches it to the carburetor, but before you tighten down that bolt, you have to add this little tiny gasket to the equation here, and it just slides in like that. And when you pinch everything together, it seals up the crack. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down. Everything seems to be working really good. The throttle, nice and smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down. I'm going to put the, I got to get the bell housing. We're going to bolt the bell housing on. And then the last thing we're going to do is going to put the actual intake on the engine. And then it's, I believe it's just, flywheel, 2 seconds, slide that on, put the shive on it. And then we can put oil and fuel in it. And there we are. I'm like 98.7% ready to get this thing started. Put the exhaust on. I also put the bell housing on, so that's all set to go. I got my little baby hitch pin for the governor. I adjusted the governor, which is basically you go to wide open throttle. You take the little governor arm right there, you push it all the way forward, and then you screw the little adjustment rod in until it just drops right in. Full throttle, governor arm all the way forward, drops right in. Put the little hitch pin in there, and we are all set. I did go ahead, intake tube is completely installed, ready to go. I did pull this out, and you may say, what is that stupid looking thing? This is actually an original part to a Senior. Basically, with the fiberglass hood being up so high, the Wisconsin oil bath air cleaner has to be above the hood line. So what they did, the ponds that is, they took this piece of pipe with these tabs and they just put it on, they sit it right on top of the air intake, the Wisconsin air intake tube. There's a long stud that runs all the way down that screws the oil bath air cleaner and this pipe all down nice and tight. I do have to make a new one. That's one of the last things I need to do. This one, the original one's all bent to hell and the threads are all mashed up. So I got a piece of 1/4-inch rod so that way I could just go ahead and make that. So need to make that, clean the air cleaner, put the air cleaner on, and I need to put the starter shive on the flywheel. And then that's it. Oil, fuel. Get the rope and we'll get it started. All right, guys, that's going to be in another video. So if you would be so kind to please come back and see how things go. But for right now, I can't believe my Senior is actually starting to look like it could be an operating machine. And I think the motor looks great. I think it just has the right look that I've been looking for. I don't, you know what I mean? I think it just looks right to me. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you would be so kind to come back and see how things turn out. 1955 wheel horse, Wisconsin AEN. Pretty darn cool. All right, guys, have a great day.